This interview with Mr. Harry Person was recorded on Monday, June the 1st, 1998 at 2 p.m. in Queensborough, New Westminster, BC. The interviewer is Dick Ramsey. Well, today I'm in Harry Person's home in Queensborough, and he is going to tell me about his experiences with the 1948 Fraser River flood. Now, this just wasn't a little stream running over the banks. This was a horrific experience for many people who lived on the banks of the Fraser River in 1948. Harry fought the flood both on Annakus Island and Queensborough. And his home is in Queensborough. Or did you live at Annakus Island at that time?
Our work was over in Annakus Island.
Yeah, but you lived in Queensborough.
No, I lived in.
Oh, you lived both. You lived in Queensborough, and well, would you like to tell me just what your experiences were there fighting the flood and on those both fronts, and those two fronts?
Well, when the flood first started, before it got too severe, there was a lot of log booms broke loose, and they come down the river. There's acres and acres of debris coming down. And so we started going out salvaging logs. But then, as it got worse, we decided we better leave that and go and fight the flood, because by this time the state of emergency was declared, and the Navy had moved over from Victoria just previously and set up in Westminster as their headquarters, and they worked from there.
Mm-hmm.
They'd quite a bunch of landing craft that they brought in, and naval tugs and so forth, and they covered a big part of the river.
And were you rescuing these logs with your own boat or somebody else's boat?
No, I was, my brother-in-law and I were picking up logs with my own boat.
Your own boat?
Yeah.
And what sort of a boat was it, Harry?
It was just about 31-foot gill netter with a four-cylinder Gray Marine engine in it, which towed pretty good. So
you were a fisherman on the river. That's a regular job, eh?
Yes, I started just during the summer of 1934 with my brother, and just while school was out, and he had just got a new boat built at the time. And then the following summer in 35, I went with him, and my second brother was with my father, and with the two boats we traveled up to Rivers Inlet, or Smith's Inlet first, and then the later part of the South Carolina rivers.
Well, you were a fisherman on the river for over 62 seasons, I would imagine. So you knew the river very well.
Quite well.
Had you ever seen the river cluttered with logs and debris as badly as it was during the flood?
No, the closest, 36 was quite a high pressure. Well, it wasn't too much damage done.
So most of your responsibilities then on Annakus Island was rescuing logs and in order to free the river for transport. Is that true?
Well, you couldn't free the river. There's so much debris coming down.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's acres of it come down at one time. The funny part was one Sunday morning, we'd pull up the raft of debris and try and get some logs out, and all these little green frogs were jumping out. One of the fellows says, "Well, I'm glad I wasn't out drinking last night."
I see. They would see the frogs in several colors too, besides green. And what happened to the frogs?
I don't
know. Did they hop to safety?
But they seemed to be just come down and drove down the river.
Yeah, that's amazing. So how long did you actually work on Annakus Island and clearing the logs?
We only worked about 2 days picking up logs, 2 or 3 days, but then the flood got so bad that we had to go and look after the property.
So in those 2 days, when you picked up the logs, Harry, what did you do with them?
Well, we just tied them up on our own property on Annakus Island.
Yeah, I see. Was there any damage on Annakus Island? Severe flooding and so on?
Well, there's a lot of water, but the dikes were built around the turn of the century, and they're quite heavy.
Mm-hmm.
They're built with a steam shovel on a barge, and they dug their way into the bank, and then they dug the big burrow pit and piled the clay up outside.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was pretty good dikes. They actually didn't break in that time. They did run over a little,
Mm-hmm.
but never actually broke.
No.
The comparison there with Queensboro,
Mm-hmm.
when it was diked in the early days, was done mostly with Chinese labor and wheelbarrow and shovel. So you could hardly walk. You couldn't walk two people abreast on the dike. They're very small. But there are a lot of people sandbagging there night and day.
Mm-hmm.
Then this old fellow that worked down the Mississippi, a fellow by the name of Scotty, he had a peg leg, and he came down and he says, by this time the army was working in there helping, and this is on the Queensboro dike, and where there'd be a leak coming through on the inside of the dike, everybody was trying to plug the leak from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, that's wrong. You don't do that. He'd take and dig a trench from the leak down the side of the dike, lay a plank at the bottom, and then filled it up with sandbags. Then drop sandbags on the outside to stop the water from getting through. That way, the previous way they're doing it would have lost the dikes, because every time you plugged a hole, it just broke out somewhere else.
I imagine that that's a remarkable story. I imagine that it must have taken a lot of organization to have everybody working together so they weren't tripping over each other, telling each other what to do and not knowing really what to do and this type of thing. Did that sort of thing happen? Or?
Well, a lot of people just hadn't had the experience
No,
before.
no. I would imagine also that they probably learned a lesson in dike building compared to the wonderful dikes at Annakus Island compared to the ones at Queensboro.
That's Annakus.
What is it?
Annakus.
Oh, Annakus. What did I call it?
Annakus.
Oh, sorry. Annakus.
You're not the first one.
Annakus. Yes, I'm. Well, anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Annakus Island.
One interesting thing that happened, it got too much for the local people.
Yeah.
So they, two of the ladies from Annakus residents went up to Westminster, and they applied to get help from the army. So the army came in. There's about 20 people came in. They were with us for a couple of days, but then things got too bad in the rest of the valley. They had to pull most of them up. We just had a skeleton crew plus ourselves. So I had a 32-foot scow that we borrowed from the Department of Public Works. And I used to use it to run up to Westminster and get fuel for the pumps and so forth. And then we go up to the sandbar above Annakus and load up a bunch of sandbags so we'd have them handy. And we just got down to Falk's Wharf when somebody said it's running over the dike here. So instead of trying to maneuver the scow into the dike, we just threw a bunch of bags on top of the boat. And one of the soldiers got out on the bow of the boat, and the tide was high, so we went nosed the boat up against the dike. He went to step off, and he went down carrying a sandbag, and he come up carrying the sandbag out of the water. So he was determined to hang on.
Oh, yeah.
So anyhow, it was
really devoted.
no big deal.
Yeah.
It was just a low spot. The dike was good solid clay. So,
yeah. Well, I guess although in many cases, although it weren't so tragic, there'd be a lot of good times too, where they did.
Oh yeah.
Well, Harry, as I understand it, further up the river, many people had to flee their homes, thousands of people actually, and there were animals lost besides human loss. And from what you're saying, it seems that Annakus Island and Queensboro didn't suffer to that extent. Would you want to comment on that?
Well, Queensboro, they had had a train down here with pot cars who was supposed to evacuate the people in case there was any trouble. They also had buses on hand. But some of them went away from Queensboro, some of them went away for the night and came back. But most of them, I think the biggest part of them just stayed right in Queensboro.
And you mentioned to me earlier about the engineer turning off some water. I didn't quite get that.
Oh, in Queensboro, down at Boundary Road, there's a pump on the south side of Queensboro, right by the Richmond boundary. It's on the Westminster Queensboro ditches. It plugged up, and I don't know his first name, but Potter, that was city engineer, he's supposed to have stripped down and dove down and cleared out the pump.
Yes, that's right. Cleared out the stream. Got it going again. Yeah, well, he probably saved a lot of grief by doing that too. But a heroic act, I'd say. Yeah. And I imagine there are all sorts of heroes and all sorts of unsung heroes too. Yeah.
The only thing wasn't near as high in 1936. The pumps alone in Queensboro wasn't keeping the water down, so they brought a couple of fire trucks that are pumpers and added to the. So they had hoses set up, and they're set up on the road and then pumping it out into the river, distributing it out. Well, what a disaster, all right. Are you aware of any precautions taken to prevent any future disasters of this? Although you certainly, anybody finds it extremely difficult to fight the elements once they're tearing loose. But what precautions are there on the program to prevent future catastrophes? Well, most of the dikes are in pretty good shape now. Yeah. And then things have changed a lot now. With all the logging up in the interior and that, a lot of the snow now comes down a lot earlier. And you don't have near as high a pressure. It doesn't peak as high. Not that it's good in some ways, stripping the timber off. But we don't get the high peak and the freshet the way we used to. It starts coming down earlier, and it's gone earlier. Do you think the people that did suffer, do you think that they were adequately compensated for their losses? Well, I don't know too much about that because on Annacis we didn't claim because the dikes didn't break, so there's no house damage. Yeah. When you got back to the fishing, Harry, could you give me some idea of what the circumstances were like? Well, in the Fraser River where I was fishing, after that, all that driftwood coming down, there was a lot of sunken debris in the water, and we had an awful time snagging the nets up. But the funny thing, when Barnston Island flooded, being that the river is running a bit downhill, the water is running over the dikes down at the bottom end. And here there's big Chinook salmon jumping over the swimming and going up in the dead water on the inside where there's easy travel. That's amazing. And it seems every year that there's been a big freshet, we seem to get a fair return of fish on the Fraser. Like the Indians used to say, lots of snow in the mountain, good sign of fish this year. Oh, I see. Very astute. Yeah. Wow. Harry, this has been most interesting. Would you have anything else you'd like to add to this? Anything comes? I think you've done remarkable. That was 50 years ago, you know. That's right. And I think the way you described this, too, I could just tell by the expression on your face that you're sort of reliving it. And I don't imagine this is an experience you'll ever forget. Oh no, you never forget. Especially when I saw the slideshow up at the library last week there. That was a good program, wasn't it? Yes, it brought back a lot of memories. Sure, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Harry. It's been
Oh, you're welcome.
very enlightening and most interesting.
Yeah.
And if in the meantime you can think of anything else, give me a call. We might get together again.
Yeah.
Thanks very much indeed, Harry.
Thank you, too, for having me.